Hello, welcome to Living in the Image of God, a program of the Banking Blessings Ministry. My name is Goodluck Ofebu.
And I am Obi Ofebu. God creates every person to represent Him in interactions with others, to be for others what God would be for them if He interacted with them directly in human form.
Our program seeks to understand the meaning of living in the image of God, resources that God has provided to guide us, and human responsibilities and benefits of living in the image of God.
Let's dive right in and learn, taste, and share from the message of our God.
In this session, we discuss God's declaration of purpose for human beings in Genesis 1 verse 26 to understand the implications of being created in the image of God.
Further, we'll discuss God's explanation of the purpose in a statement to angels regarding Abraham in Genesis 18 verse 19.
The information leads to an understanding that God creates every person to represent Him among others.
He establishes a network of people around every person, such that each member of the network is potentially a channel for his interactions with other members.
The network is dynamic because He can insert people into a network or withdraw people from the network at any time.
Human interactions network is a concept for understanding relationships that God establishes for distributing human service to points of need.
The network is based on provider-receiver relationships among people, which define human responsibility to others and benefits through others.
Every person is potentially a provider of goods and service needed by others,
and potentially a receiver of goods and service provided by others.
God declares His purpose for people in Genesis chapter 1 verse 26. Let's read from the Bible.
Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." From Genesis chapter 1 verse 26 NIV.
To understand the declaration, let's focus on the key phrase, in our image, in our likeness.
Through this phrase, God communicates His intention for every human being to represent Him among others.
He creates every person to be to other people what God would be to them if He was human like them.
For example, a person that touches another conveys to the other person what God's touch will feel like.
Similarly, your laughter would convey God's laughter, and your cry would convey God's cry.
That is, every person's response to another person would convey God's response to the other person.
That's what it means that God creates every person in His image and His likeness to represent Him among other people and other creations.
God explains His purpose for people again in a statement of His purpose for Abraham during a conversation with angels.
Let's read from the Bible in Genesis chapter 18 verse 19.
"For I have chosen him, so that he will direct his children and his household after him, to keep the word of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what He has promised him."
The statement explains what God expects from Abraham in interactions with others and his household. In particular, the statement explains what God expects from Abraham in interactions with his children.
He expects the same from every person.
God's statement of what He expects from Abraham reveals what He expects from every person.
He expects every person to keep the word of the Lord by doing what is right and just.
Direct your household to do the same.
Bring up your children to do the same.
And replicate the behavior through generations.
Fulfilling this expectation is necessary for God to fulfill His promise. He links fulfillment of the expectation to fulfillment of His promise.
What does keeping the way of the Lord mean?
Living to fulfill God's purpose, that every person is His representative among other people.
That is, every person is to others what God would be to them if He was with us in human form.
Christ explained in more detail in the Sermon on the Mount.
And through direct teaching, parables and real-life illustrations during His human ministry.
Keeping the word of the Lord means living in the image of God.
In our program, we seek to understand living in the image of God through Christ's teaching and other information in the Bible.
Also, we seek to understand implications of living in the image of God for specific circumstances of human interactions.
First, we will seek fundamental understanding based on the Sermon on the Mount and other Christ teaching.
Then we will try to apply our understanding to specific aspects of human interactions, such as between husband and wife, parent and child, commercial and non-commercial relationships, people versus government, and other relationships.
What did we learn in this Bible study?
God creates every person to represent Him among other people and among other creations.
He establishes provider-receiver relationships among people to distribute human service to points of need.
He expects every person to keep the word of the Lord so that He will fulfill His promise.
Keeping the way of the Lord means living in the image of God.
Please join us again in our continuing discussion of living in the image of God.
Thank you, and God bless you.